Alright, let's just get this started. This is my year-end games reflections of 2019. This is part 2 of my games reflections, where I talk about the games I've beaten for the first time in the second half of this year. If you want part 1 from the first half of the year, there will be a link in the description to that video. Same rules as other games reflections. Games will be rated on a scale of 1 to 10 out of 10. They have to have been beaten for the first time this year. And finally, games can have and probably have been released in years prior to 2019. Anyways, let's get this rolling. Just gonna say this right now, this game's awesome. The Messenger is a 2D platformer where you play as a ninja. Your task is to deliver a scroll. You are the Messenger. The levels are so incredibly well made and paired with super tight and fun controls. Seriously, I can't describe how fun this game is to platform it. I mean, of course it is though, you're a ninja. How do you screw up fun gameplay in a game where you're a ninja? If that wasn't enough though, the characters and story were great. Won't say too much about the story itself, but it gets really meta and has a lot of great comedy. Same with the characters themselves. The characters are well written, are sarcastic as heck, and I love it. 9.8 out of 10. Going through this game in my head, I'm really struggling to find a negative thing about this game. Even the really challenging sections of this game are incredibly satisfying to get through once you actually do it. The soundtrack is fantastic too. And once you get to the twist, it gets so good. Play this game. Do it. I command you. From one ninja game to another, it's Origami. Warning, this game contains a lot of blood. Just wanted to let those who are a bit squeamish know ahead of time. But, fun fact, you can actually turn off the blood in the options if it bothers you. You play as Origami, a vengeance spirit in a quest to free a young woman by the name of Yamiko from the Kaiho army in feudal Japan. As a spirit ninja assassin, you have many powers, varying from teleporting from shadow to shadow, throwing shadow knives, creating shadow clones, and even summoning shadow spirits to drag your unfortunate victims to the underworld. I love all of these abilities in this game because they allow for a wide variety of ways to get through the levels. And while you can use your powers of darkness to take down all of your foes, you can also use them to get through the levels stealthily without harming a single one. This is something I really like. Now, these two different playstyles allow you to get medals so you can unlock different costumes to play in. The different medals you need to get to obtain the costumes are Yuri medals, gotten from beating a level without being found out at all, Kami medals, gotten from beating the level without harming a single person, and Oni medals, gotten from killing all of the guards in the stage. My personal favorite costume is the Wrath skin, unlocking from Yuri medals. I rate this game as a 9 out of 10. Origami is really satisfying to play, with the many options you can do to play the game. The story as it unfolds is good enough, but the main reason to play this game is the satisfaction of taking down guards in creative ways, or getting through the levels without getting caught. I did enjoy the story though, until the end when something is revealed I just didn't really care for. But all in all, pretty top-notch stealth game. Except for S ranking chapter 12. That was straight up aggravating. Otherwise, really solid game. Okay, so you can't beat Mario Maker 2 in the traditional sense, since its main mode is essentially endless. But it does have a story mode, so let's go over that quick, because that's the next game in this list. Super Mario Maker 2. There are 120 levels in total. They aren't that difficult to get through them all, but at the same time they aren't entirely too easy to beat. Obviously, because they are levels made by Nintendo, they definitely feel like authentic Mario levels, which are some of my favorite levels in both Mario Maker games to play in. I really like that the story mode has an actual hub world to explore in and interact with stuff in, as it feels more personal than a simple menu that you select levels in. I'm also a fan of the reasoning for having to rebuild the castle in the first place. That was fun. Solid 9 out of 10. Since I already really liked Mario Maker 1 and 2, the levels people make in both games, and all of the creative things you can do with the levels, it's no wonder that I'd like this mode. It's fun mode with a good handful of creative and fun levels. It's also a good introduction and tutorial for what to expect when playing player-made levels, how to play the game, and how all the mechanics in the different game styles works. If you already have Mario Maker 2, I'd suggest going through the story mode because it's pretty good. It's been years since I first beat Megaman X, so I figured it was about time to start on the rest of the X games. This is Megaman X2. Everything that Megaman X does, X2 improved upon greatly, which should be what sequels strive to do. First off, you start with the speed boots from the last game. This is something that X1 should have done, because honestly, until you got them, the game can be a little sluggish compared to after you get them. Then you get all kinds of upgrades that improve the movement even more, like an air boost and the arm upgrade, which is actually something different from what it was in X1. The bosses are, for the most part, pretty fun to fight, except for the X-Hunters. They can go die in a hole. Not just for the reason of them being annoying to fight, but they have certain items that you need to collect to get the best ending, and you need to go out of your way to find them. If you don't get them when they initially appear in the stage you're in, they disappear forever and you can't get the best ending. That kinda sucks. You know what else isn't great? The Maverick levels. Blah. That being said, the rest of the stages in the game are pretty fun to play. 8.5 out of 10. I had fun playing X2. It expanded upon what X1 had and had pretty cool sub-weapons. I played through it again the day after I beat it to get the missable items, and I had much more fun playing it then because I actually knew what I was doing and what to expect from the levels. I had a good time. I've often found that RPG Maker games have a certain charm to them that bigger games don't quite have. Light is one such game. It's a game that stars a con man and a dragon girl who eats lies, hence the name Lie. The Steam version comes with 3 short chapters bundled together, but originally they were made to be 3 short games. While they are short though, they're cute and very much worth your time. The theme of the game is that it's a mystery game. As you unravel the mystery of what's going on in the 3 chapters, Athena, or Effie for short, eats the lies given a monstrous form, and you uncover the truth. This is a very short game, and as such, it gets a short review. 9 out of 10. It's a cute little mystery game that's simple and doesn't worry about having to have a super in-depth battle system. The only unfortunate thing is that your levels, experience, and abilities don't carry over between the games, so you start from scratch every time. But it's still an adorable little mystery game, and don't you dare make assumptions about Lie because it's an RPG Maker game. Love between 2 people from warring lands. 13 towers filled to the brim with monsters, and a curse set upon a loved one. This is Pandoras Tower for the Nintendo Wii. Aaron and Elena are in love, but Elena has been cursed to turn into a horrifying monster. But there is a way to reverse the curse. You, Aaron, must venture into the 13 towers in a land known only as the Scar. Within these towers, you must slay the monsters within and bring back their flesh for Elena to eat. For Elena to remove the curse completely, she must consume what is known as master flesh from each master from the towers. So armed with only the Astral Chain and a sword, Aaron goes into the towers alone to fight monsters, solve puzzles, and complete his quest. The combat is fun. It gives you a few different options for how you can fight the creatures within, but a good chunk of the combat does revolve around using the chain to fight, which I find fun and unique. Using the chain does require waggle physics if you choose to use the nunchuck, since it's on the Wii. But honestly, I really liked how it felt to control. You also need to time out each visit to the tower so that you're not away from Elena for too long. If you don't get Elena monster flesh before her gauge completely empties, she turns into a monster and you get a game over. This adds another thing to think about as you go through the towers. I'm not going to go too much more into this game because I actually really want to go over this game in detail as an LP in the future. But I will say that I love how expressive Elena is with her emotions and everything. It adds a deeper connection to the characters, and it made Elena feel like she was a real person. 9.3 out of 10. I love this game, but in order to get the best ending, you need to grind out affection for Elena. That made it a bit of a slog at points when the game as a whole isn't really that large to begin with. But the game does have New Game Plus, so I don't think it was meant to be done all in one playthrough. The game does have one aspect I really hate though. The North American version has a game-breaking bug. The game freezes on the loading screen when you re-enter the 11th and 12th towers after you leave them. There are workarounds for this bug, but it's incredibly stupid. Aside from that though, excellent game. Also, something funny I learned that was completely unplanned was that this was the 13th game I beat this year. I like that. The Marvelous Mistake, or The Marvelous Mistake. Depending on how you feel about this next game, it could be both. The Marvelous Mistake stars the beautiful lady thief, Sophia Take. This creep named Ralph has stolen your aunt's will that has stated that all of her art will go to you and forged it to instead name himself the sole owner of this beautiful art. Sophia has now tasked herself to take all of the art back and find the real will that will name her the sole owner of the art once again. I really liked this game until I came to a heartbreaking realization. This is a stealth game in which the guards you have to sneak around have random paths. That means you can't plan your path around ahead of time because the guards are always changing where they're going. It was frustrating to say the least. There are 3 characters you can play as. Sophia, of course, the mysterious thief with a cane, Harry Carver, and the pickpocket, Daisy Hobbs. Each one has their own playstyle and controls, and each one is different difficulty. But you cannot play as the other characters in a level until you've cleared it as Sophia. Harry is easy mode, Sophia is normal, and Daisy is hard mode. Suffice to say, I hated playing as Daisy and did not finish all of her levels. As Sophia, though, you can get all kinds of special gadgets like teleporters and smoke bombs. I like the gadgets, but you can only use one for each level and you can't even choose which one. 7.5 out of 10. Before I learned that the guards are randomized, the game was on a path to being a solid 9, but learning that soured the whole experience for me. Then Daisy's later levels were stupid hard on top of that and I hated them. Unfortunate minor details, but not a bad game in general. It was okay. Just not terrible, not great. Let's just jump right in. Shining Resonance Refrain. This is an action JRPG where your weapons are instruments and you use music to battle your enemies. In battle, you have regular attacks, which use AP, and your magic attacks that use MP. Using your regular attacks restores your MP, and magical attacks fill up your AP meter so you can charge your magical attacks. I was fond of this system as it makes you use a mix of regular and magic attacks, giving battle some variety. Outside of battle, mainly in towns and camps, you can have chats with your allies to gain affinity and eventually go on dates with your party members. So I guess this game is a dating sim as well. These chats and dates give the characters depth that makes you care about them more, which I love. And that leads me to the characters. Almost all of the characters are great in each of their own respects. Egnum is a total bro. Sonia is caring and endearing. Excella is cold and cruel at first, but turns out to care deeply about her people and kingdom. The list goes on and on with great characters, which makes it all the more disappointing that the main protagonist, Yuma, suffers from generic anime protagonist syndrome. He's just bland, and his character has been done a million times over, which sucks because he's the main character and basically required to use the majority of the game. Something else I don't like about Yuma is that he has a form change where he turns into a dragon. Not really a spoiler since he does it at the very beginning. He's pretty powerful in this form, but the best attacks in this form are basically mash A to do thing. That's it. And if the AI is controlling Yuma, they will not turn into a dragon form, and you can't directly say, hey, turn into a dragon. You have to manually pause, take control of Yuma, and basically mash A for a minute if you want to use the dragon. It's dumb. But do you want to know what the dumbest thing about this game is? How much of this game relies on RNG? You need a monster for a quest that only appears in certain weather? Keep sleeping at the inn or at a campsite and hope you get the right weather. You need a specific drop for crafting? Hope you find an enemy that drops the thing and hope again that they will drop it after fighting a billion of them. RNG is not nice in this game. 8 out of 10. It's really unfortunate because this game was well on its way to being a mid-9 until I realized the dumb stuff in this game. There's one more dumb thing before I end this. There's no fast travel other than back to town, so you have to traverse the same areas over and over again to get to where you need to go, and it becomes a bit tedious after a while. So in short, this is a good game that is bogged down by unfortunate design decisions. Also, one last thing, Rena is best girl confirmed, don't at me. Next up is Super Mario Bros. You know, the game that literally everyone ever has played, the one that started a cultural phenomenon and kicked gaming into overdrive in the mid-80s? Yeah, that game. Kind of weird that I've never actually beaten it before this year, since I've played most of it many times over the years. Finally did it though. Don't really have a lot to say about it since everyone under the sun knows what this game is. 8.5 out of 10. Honestly, it's not that hard, and it's fun. It's a nice casual game that you can clear in an afternoon, especially if you take warps, which I opted not to for the sake of being able to say that I did it. Didn't really have that much trouble with it until World 8, where I got stuck on it for about 1 or 2 hours on and off. It's a fun game that kicked off so much of gaming culture as a whole. For October, I thought I'd stream a short, kinda spooky game. Limbo. The next game is Limbo. Arachnophobia warning! There are some very big spiders in this game. If you don't like spiders, this may not be the game for you, but everyone else, welcome. Limbo is a 2D puzzle platformer where you are playing as a very fragile boy. He cannot swim, he can't jump very high, and he dies very easily. You go through many different locales such as a forest, a factory, and a city. Along the way, there are many traps and puzzles you need to solve in order to get to your final destination. This game is very unique in that it's entirely grayscale. No colors at all. I really like this art direction as it's the exact right amount of creepy while also being beautiful to look at. 8.5 out of 10. The puzzles aren't too difficult and the game is relatively short, so it can be completed in a single sitting if you would like. It's also a nice short puzzle game that's perfect for the spook month of October. So if you're looking for a perfectly spooky game, this would probably be your best bet. Here's Rayman 3. This game starts with our title character, Rayman, and also Globox, asleep in the forest as they typically are. They're suddenly woken up by a commotion caused by a creature called a black lum named Andre. They scare a bunch of red lums, which causes them to turn into even more black lums, and they cause general havoc and do stuff. Honestly, I didn't pay a lot of attention to the plot because the voices were a little hard to follow. They do voices that are silly but difficult to hear sometimes, they talk really fast a lot of the time, and there were no options for subtitles. I couldn't find any option anywhere in the game. None of that is important though, since the plot really doesn't matter that much. So, anyways, the game. The game controls fine. It's a 3D platformer and that's where it strives. It's fun to jump around and punch things. It has various power-ups that let you get around the levels, but you have a limited amount of time to use them to do a thing. That's not great, but they're all over the levels, so it's not that bad. I just would have preferred to have them be permanent unlocks. The levels themselves are score-based, so you get a percentage at the end of a level saying how well you did. This scoring is incredibly strict, and after the first couple levels, I just stopped caring about scoring because it just made me feel like I was playing terribly, even though I thought I was doing alright. From what I could tell though, scoring high only unlocked bonus levels to play, which isn't a great incentive to achieving a high score. It just makes the player feel bad for potentially scoring low and doesn't really fit the game genre of 3D platformer. The platforming and the combat though, particularly most of the bosses, were fun. Something else I really didn't like though was that there was only a level select after you beat the game, and even then it's as minimalistic as they come. Not having a level select in a game like this where you can easily miss stuff in a level is just disappointing. I think I'm gonna have to give this game a 7 out of 10. This game was okay. It wasn't terrible by any means, but it had some parts that I really didn't care for. But the platforming is fun, and I liked the punching dudes from far away part of the combat. Heck yeah, time for another Metroidvania. Outland is an artistically styled Metroidvania mixed with a bit of bullet hell. You can't do it immediately, but the main mechanic of this game is that you have to change the polarity of your energy between light and dark to avoid energy attacks and deal damage to enemies. Light is immune to light energy and dark is immune to dark energy. But you can only deal damage to dark when you're light and vice versa. It forces you to stop for a second and think about what you need to be to approach the situation. But you have to think quick because a blast of light could be coming at you right after the dark, and I really like that. The game is short, but not too short, and the areas are decently sized. I never felt like any given place was too big to get through. I personally think that this game was the perfect length for what I wanted to play at the time. The platforming was a bit tricky, but not too much. The bosses were unique as well as engaging, and I liked the power-ups. I will say though that this game was a bit linear, but not as much so if you go for 100%. There's a bit of backtracking when it comes to getting everything, but it didn't feel all that tedious. The only thing about that aspect of it I really didn't appreciate was the map. When you're in an area, you can see the local map in depth, but you can only see the local map. If you're missing something in a previous area, you have to physically go there and see what you missed, which is frustrating because there isn't a warp to every map in the game. 9.2 out of 10. This game was very enjoyable, but I guess I can see people not liking the linearity of the game among certain other aspects. I found the art direction of this game great in addition to everything else, and the music of this game fit the setting pretty well. Good game is good. Man, what's up with me playing games this year that have chains as an important part of the game? The only game that I can think of that would round out this theme is another Castlevania game. Anyways, here's Astral Chain. The year is 2078. The world is in chaos. Due to an event known as the Third Extinction that happened over 30 years ago, much of the Earth is uninhabitable, and hostile interdimensional creatures from the astral plane have invaded the planet. You're part of a police task force known as Neuron, a group dedicated to keeping the people of the Ark safe from the creatures of the astral plane. You use a creature called a Legion to fight them, solve police cases, and in general help people. The chain that binds you to your Legion can be used to chain your opponents to the ground, and then you can strike with your weapon, the X-Baton. The combat can be tricky to get used to since you're essentially controlling two characters at once, but you get used to it with time. The combat is fun and engaging, and when you're not fighting, you can use your Legion to explore the maps and do side quests. I always love side questing. The problem, though, is that the missions are semi-missable. If you go too far in a chapter, you can get locked out of them for a while. However, this game is a chapter select-based game, so if you miss something or are unable to do something due to not having a thing, you can always go back and redo a chapter. Unfortunately, that means having to redo a bunch of stuff, but it's way better than flat out being locked out forever. I like this game a lot. 8.9 out of 10. I had a lot of fun playing Astral Chain, but like a lot of other Platinum games, this game's missions have a weird scoring system. A lot of times I kept getting S pluses when I expected to get C's, and I got C's when I expected at least A's. I still don't get it, but maybe I'll look it up at a later date. There is one last thought I had all throughout this game, and this is a spoiler warning for those who haven't finished or haven't played the game yet. This game shares a lot of very similar themes with the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I don't know how to feel about that. To me at least, it really feels like Astral Chain was heavily inspired by that show, except Astral Chain did it a bit better, in my opinion. Anyways, really great game. I very much recommend it. Last year, I covered the main game in my Games Reflections, and I've been itching to play the DLC that this game has. A Hat in Time DLC. At the time of recording this, there are 2 DLC packs, not including the soundtrack on the Steam store. Seal the Deal and Yakuza Metro. In Seal the Deal, you are traveling the Arctic on a cruise ship run by a walrus and the most adorable crew of seals you will ever see. You collect timepieces and help the crew with their problems. Basically, this part of the DLC is just more of the game. If you enjoyed the main game, you will enjoy this too. Also included in the first piece of DLC is the deal part of it, Death Wish mode. Basically, this mode is a bunch of challenge missions that unlock a ton of customization options for Hat Kid. I haven't delved too much into this because they are very difficult. If you didn't think the game was challenging enough, try some of these out. You'll be glad you did. Next up, we have DLC Pack 2, Yakuza Metro. Holy moly, is this chapter great. It's a free roam level where you can do whatever you want in whatever order you want. It takes place in a neon-lit underground subway system run entirely by cats, and the cat-centric gang, the Yakuza. Between the Metro setting, the open-world aspect, the vaporwave music, and all of the cat characters including the Empress, it was amazing. I loved it. On top of that, this chapter adds a ton of cosmetic options for Hat Kid and adds collectible stickers that you can use in camera mode. If all that was not enough, DLC 2 pack comes with online party mode. You can play with your friends online, explore the levels with them, and even find random people online to play with too. I'd like to say that I enjoyed all this, but I haven't really had the chance to dive into the online party yet. I definitely want to in the future, though. The DLC released as of this recording gets a 9.5 out of 10 as a whole. All of this DLC is just great, and pretty much is just more of the main game, which is fantastic because the main game is just so dang good. My only problem is that I want more of it. I want to play more levels, I want to see more of the Empress's backstory, and I want to see more weapons to choose from. That being said, the amount of content in all of the DLCs is stupendous. I'm just saying that I would be willing to pay for a DLC round 3, maybe even DLC 4. Nudge nudge, wink wink. I just don't know if they have more planned after this. My point of all of this is great game, great DLC, Hope for more in the future. So I've played every Metroid game there is, save for a small amount of them, with this next game being one of those ones. The first Metroid game for the NES. This game laid the basic groundwork for many of the Metroid games over the years. The map exploration, the item collection all over the map, the upgrades themselves, and having to fight both Ridley and the Metroids. All of these things are mainstays to the series for a reason. They're fun. As far as first games on the NES go, this is one of the better ones, and I had fun with it. The problem is, though, this is still a first game in the series on the NES. Naturally, there are limitations and archaic game design choices. There's no in-game map to help you with exploration, there's no health refill stations, and this game can be cryptic when it comes to where items are. But those problems aside, I had fun with this game. 8.2 out of 10. It's no wonder that Metroid continued on as a series for years to come after this game, and continues to have a dedicated fanbase to this day. If you do want to play this game though, I highly suggest getting a map and a checklist online. You'll have a much better time with those in hand. Before we end off, I'd like to quickly go over all of the games from this year and how much I'd recommend them. Star Fox Assault. Probably the best tech demo of a Star Fox game I've seen. If you can find it for not too expensive, I highly recommend it. Octopath Traveler. A fantastic return to classic turn-based combat with a good handful of short stories. Highly recommend it if you love turn-based RPGs, but know that it could take a while to finish. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, World of Light. Way too long for what it is. Fun at first, but would have benefited a lot from being shorter. Also, would have liked a lot more if it was an adventure mode like in Brawl, rather than a set amount of events that you have to finish. Hover, Revolt of Gamers. Fun to control, cool mechanics, disliked some of the mission types, but still a mostly fun game. Recommended if you like Jet Set Radio and 3D platformers. Hyperdimension Neptunia, Rebirth 1. A fun turn-based RPG that's a parody on various anime and video games. Had a pretty good time, though it does have a fair bit of fan service, so be aware of that. De Blob 2. 3D platformer about recoloring a colorless world. It's alright, but it's basically the first game again. If you want more of the first game, or didn't play De Blob, then yeah, I can say you'd probably like this. Hot Tin Roof, The Cat That Wore a Fedora. Pretty decent puzzle Metroidvania detective game, but would have benefited having a map greatly. Get on sale if you want it. The Messenger. Fantastic 2D platformer where you play as a ninja. It has writing that is super meta and incredibly comedic. Great gameplay, great writing, great music, very much recommended. Origami. A stealth game where you use your powers of darkness to assassinate foes and get through the levels. One of my favorite stealth games I've played. The Super Mario Maker 2 Story Mode. Great introduction on how to play the game, and a great example of good level design in Super Mario Maker 2. Don't buy this game just for the story mode, but if you have the game already, I highly recommend playing this mode. Megaman X2. A really good improvement on the first game, and a fun time to jam through in an afternoon. Although, some of the bosses can be annoying to fight. Light. A simple RPG Maker game about a dragon girl that eats lies. A cute short game that I can happily recommend to any fan of RPG Maker games. Pandoras Tower. A beautiful action RPG where you traverse 13 towers to retrieve monster flesh for your love to remove a curse. One of my personal favorites of this year. The Marvelous Mistake. An okay stealth game, I guess. Can't really recommend unless it's on sale and you really like stealth games. Due to the mechanics of this one though, I guarantee that you could find a better stealth game that's more worth the price. Shining Resonance Refrain. A JRPG where you use musical instruments as weapons and use music to fight your foes. A solid game bogged down by unfortunate game design choices. Super Mario Bros. 1. Come on, you know this game. You more than likely already own it too. Go and play it in an afternoon and you'll likely have a good time. Limbo. Puzzle platformer that's a solid blend of beautiful and creepy. Perfect for Halloween. Rayman 3. It's okay, I guess. I suppose it's kind of fun as a casual game, but mostly just meh. Outland. Pretty good Metroidvania with a cool gimmick of switching between light and dark to avoid dark and light respectively. If it's on sale or in a game bundle, chances are you'll have a pretty good time. Astral Chain. A hack and slash game where you use a creature called a legion and a chain that binds you to fight interdimensional monsters and solve police cases. One of my top games that released this year. Had a pretty dang good time. The Hat in Time DLC. Had an amazing time playing this. If you like the main game, this is more of that, and that isn't a bad thing in the slightest bit. And finally, Metroid on the NES. There's a reason why this continues to be a fairly recognizable series to this day. The original game had solid ideas, and it was pretty fun to play. A bit archaic in certain areas, but it's one of the better first game in a series games on the NES. And so, that ends 2019. All in all, this year has been pretty average compared to last year. Sure, there were less truly amazing masterpieces in this list, but there were also less duds in my opinion. Looking at you, Sonic Adventure 2. I guess that's what happens when you play Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, and both Xenoblade 1 and 2 in the same year. It's not an easy thing to top that list. Still, I had a lot of fun with a majority of those games that I did play this year. Anyways, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate anyone who took the time to watch this today. And I hope that you'll come back for future videos, like the next Let's Play that starts in the beginning of the year. Alright, I'll see you in 2020. Later.